what's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Battlefield Project podcast. I'm your host, Matthew Rhoda, and this is the podcast for people who understand that life is a battle and only the strong will thrive. I'm joined by my good buddy here, Billy, who I'm going to introduce in a minute. How do you pronounce your last name? Zerillo?
Yeah. Yep.
Perfect. Billy Zerillo, who I'm going to introduce in a minute. But before I do, one favor to ask: if you're watching this episode or any other episode, and you got value out of it, I do ask that you please share it with somebody, friend, family, business associate, whoever you think might benefit from hearing these stories that we're sharing. That's the whole goal of this podcast, is to inspire people, to let everybody out there know that every single human being on this earth has battles that they have to fight through, some on a daily basis, but the winners fight their way through those battles, and we don't play the victim card. So my goal is to get guests on here to share their stories with all of you who are listening. Basically inspire you to go out there and face those battles, win those battles, so you can live a good, healthy, fulfilling life. So if you could share the show, I'd really appreciate it. And without further ado, my buddy Billy Zerillo is a financial advisor who's dedicated to helping individuals and families become financially healthy. With a passion for helping others, Billy provides personalized advice and solutions to the financial questions that keeps people up at night. A resident of Lidditz, PA, Billy is married to his wife, Megan, and is an avid fitness enthusiast, so we get along. In his free time, he's dedicated to making a positive impact in his community, using his expertise to educate and empower those around him. With a warm and approachable personality, Billy is the trusted advisor that everyone needs in their corner. I mean, you want to positively impact the community, you love fitness, you want to help people. I couldn't agree with any of that more, man. Thanks for being on the show, dude. Appreciate you.
No, I appreciate it, and I'm representing, right?
Yes,
I'm part of the crew.
I'm saying, well, I'm like, this is recording number, let's call it 35 or 37 or something. You're the first person to throw a Battlefield shirt on, man. So much respect.
I had to. When I was, it was actually, it's funny because like when I get dressed in the morning, like especially just like a t-shirt, like I don't really like. I want to optimize my day, so like the shirt that's on top is just the shirt I put on, right? And this happened to be the shirt that was right on top.
Meant to be, dude. Meant to be.
So yeah, it's awesome. I'm excited to be here. So
thanks, man. Yeah. So like we talked before we hit the record button, man, share a battle or two that you've experienced in your life, kind of how that battle came to be, how you fought your way through that battle, and now the life that you're living because you had the courage and the fortitude to face it head on and not play that victim card.
Yeah. I mean, if anybody knows me, and it's so funny, like I'm not the type of person to complain about anything. Like I've always been the type of person that just says, okay, this is the situation that I'm dealt with. Like how do I get past it? And like I don't ever ask the question like, why did this happen to me, or why is this happening, or anything like that. It's like, well, this is happening. How do I get past it? Right? How do I move forward? And it really stems from, I think really, you asked for one or two, but really my whole life has been a battle. From the day I was born to today, it's every day is a battle, and every day is a different challenge. But I'm gonna fast forward into like right when I was about 30 years old. I think the first major battle that I had in my life was right when I hit that 30 age, and it was a battle in the sense of a battle between myself, because I was working in a field that I just didn't want to be a part of anymore. And I remember I was working in hospitality, so I was working as a banquet director of banquets at this point. I remember walking into my office, sitting down to do the schedules, and I just remember like getting overly emotional and just started crying. I was like, I remember asking myself the question, like, can I do this for the next like 40 plus years?
It's a long time to think about.
I'm 30, right? Like 35, 40 years like from now, like, and I just remember seeing people in the industry that I looked up to, and I saw their lifestyle. I saw, the guy that I respected the most was my mentor, taught me a lot, was a great leader of men. But like personally speaking, like he had been married 3 times, right? He never saw his kids, like he was always at work. And I just remember saying to myself, like, is that the life I want to have, right? Yeah. Because that's the path I'm on. And so I remember just like if, and me, right? I'm a very happy-go-lucky person, that type of personality. And I was not that person. Like I was angry at the world. I would get angry at anything, right? I was married at this point. We would just be fighting all the time. And it was because like of that disconnect, right? And so that's really where my self-development journey began. I started reading books. I started doing, podcasts. Podcasts weren't even that big of a thing back then, but still started listening to stuff and just starting to build my mind. And I literally walked into my boss's office and was just like, dude, like, I can't do this anymore. Like, I'm quitting. I had no like job like past that 2 weeks. I was just like, I got to get out of this, or else it's going to just ruin everything in my life. And so I bounced around from job to job in the hospitality field, and I was searching, man. I didn't know what I was doing with my life. I was praying, I was asking, the universe for answers and stuff like that. And it was a dark time. It really was. For 2 years, it was a really dark time in my life, and a time that I really don't even remember at this point. Like it just seems like a darkness, right? Like I look back at that period, I'm like, I don't really remember anything.
Yep.
And I bounced around from job to job, and at the time we were living in Alabama. I ended up moving back to Pennsylvania with my wife, and she luckily has a great career. And so I was like, well, I could find a job anywhere, right, in hospitality, and so I found a job, right? I found a job as a banquet manager at a local kind of venue, like mom and pop type of venue. And again, I did not like what I was doing, but I had to bring in some income, right? And I fell into the world of finance. So I fell into this world as a financial advisor, because I met with a financial advisor, and I remember just having that experience of like feeling like, hey, like we're in a good spot, right? We have money, we're saving enough, all this stuff. And I just remember just being that weight lifted off my shoulders, right? And I remember walking out of the office, and my wife, Megan, she goes, hey, Bill, you'd be really good at that. And I was like, good at what? Good at what, right? Yeah. Going back to the universe, like telling you what you should be doing, right? And she said, you'd be really good at that. And she's like, you can learn finance. Like that's a learnable skill. You can read some books, you can take some tests, you can learn about finance. She said, you just can't teach how you are with interacting with people. Yeah, that's just kind of built inside of you. And so I was like, man, so I started studying. I was really excited. I was like, man, this could be something, so, and I was still working my job full time, studying, getting trained and stuff like that. So I was like, man, if, maybe in a year I could go full time and, I build a book of business. Right. Yep. And suddenly I'll never forget it. 5 years to this day, to December 13th, a day before my wife's birthday, a couple days before Christmas, right? Now at this other place, I was doing my job, right? I was putting policies and procedures in place, and it was a well-oiled machine after a couple of months working in this place. Mm-hmm. And I remember setting up for an event, and I see my boss walk in, and you could probably tell where this is going. I see my boss walk in, he just has a drained look on his face. And he's like, Bill, I got to talk to you. I said, okay, great. We always have discussions and stuff like that. And he walks in and he sits me down and he says, hey, I don't know how to tell you this, but we don't need you anymore. Right? It's not being fired because of you were bad at your job or even, hey, the business is just not there. They didn't see value in me anymore, because really, he said, You've done such a great job at building this place and optimizing stuff that we don't need you anymore.
We can operate efficiently without you. Good job.
Right? And I've always operated that way. When I would train supervisors beneath me, because I had a supervisor there, and I told her, I said, listen, I'm training you to take my job, not because I think you're going to take my job, but I want you to be prepared for that opportunity when it arises, that if somewhere else opens up or this opens up, you're ready to go, right? They were like, yeah, so and so can take your job. We're gonna pay her less, and we'll see you later, right? Yeah. And that was a big battle, right? I've never been fired, laid off, in my entire life, right? And that was a really kind of aha moment. And I remember driving home, just like, what am I gonna do with my life? Like, this is the world's worst feeling of being where I am. And I remember calling my wife, and my wife's my rock, right? And I think we need everybody, at least one person in your life that's just kind of when you're not strong, they're strong,
Yep.
right? And she just kind of was on the phone with me, and she didn't say, like, she wasn't dramatic about it. She wasn't like, "Oh my God, what are we gonna do?"
Hmm.
She was just like, "Well, you wanted to be a full-time advisor. Here you go."
You've been gifted with the opportunity. Grab it.
And so, it's moments like that that then the people that you lean on that get you through those moments. And like, I think about that every day. Like, um, when tough times come and bad times come, like, I say to myself, like, no, I'm meant to be here, because if
Yeah.
that situation wouldn't have happened, like, that happened for a reason,
Yep.
right? That minor situation happened for a reason. And it was just, yeah, I mean, so I think my big takeaway from that moment in my life was, when you're not strong, to lean on the others that are in your life, right?
Yeah.
Because I think, like, especially like for us, right, like as guys, right, we want to be that alpha, right, like
Yep.
the strong.
Got it all together all the time.
Yeah,
Yep.
and we don't. And in those moments, to be vulnerable, like, that even strengthen our relationship, right?
Yeah.
Like, to a different degree. So that was a huge challenge. And how I overcame it was leaning on other people.
Yeah.
You don't always have to do it yourself. So,
Yeah.
uh,
Dude,
yeah.
what you said, you just tied both, like the very beginning of what you said, which I wanted to bring up, and then what you just finished with, and like you tied in a nice bow and presented it to me to make this connection. But in the beginning, you said basically like, I'm a happy-go-lucky dude. I don't complain about stuff. Everything happens for it. That's exactly how I'm wired. Like you couldn't find me complaining about. I mean, there's times where like four kids are up in the middle of the night, and I'm like, I just want to sleep. Like I'm complaining in that moment because I'm like, I just want to sleep. But like in general in life, like that's 1% of the time or less. Like all the time, I'm just like, I'm grateful for it all, the good, the bad, the ugly, like all of it. That being said, like you said, like, and you just shared your story, that doesn't mean that like we're not dealing with stuff. So I think there's a fine line between being happy-go-lucky, optimistic, wearing that like brave face all the time and being that brave presence, but also being able to admit when I get knocked down or when you get knocked down and lean on that person or people for that strength that you, even though to the outside world you look good, like you probably went home that day after getting fired and like for the most part looked good, we're functioning and like could have like carried on a conversation with somebody else and been like, yeah, nothing happened to Billy today. He's good. He's strong. He's like he always is. But right below that surface level is like that pain of like, I've never been fired before. Like, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing with my life right now. Like, my next step, like all that stuff. So to have that person, again, whether it's one person or multiple people or a group of people, whatever it is, that you can say like, hey, even though I'm super optimistic and happy all the time, like today's tough. Like this is what I just experienced. Like I need a little bit of a pick me up. Right? I just need like, can you pour some positive energy into me, or can you just like be an ear to listen, because I just got to like process this by getting the words out of my mouth and like put it out in the universe to figure out like what my next phase is. Uh, and it's, I mean, I met your wife once at that axe throwing thing, but like you could tell she's your angel, man. Like that's a very like hearing you tell that story, and then also just hearing that she was the first one to kind of say like, hey, you could do that. Like that was God whispering through her to be like, say this to him. Like he could do this. This is probably in his future, and like he just might need to hear that from someone he loves and trusts. And then so that's point A, and then point B being you got fired, you called her on the way home. Like some wives would be like, oh my God, how did you lose your job? What's wrong with like, and completely gone in a different direction and like added stress and anxiety into the situation. But she was the rock that was just like, okay, like again, let's look at this from like a sane, like calm perspective, which is just like, this is the opportunity that maybe you were asking for and it came in a different way, but like here it is. Now what do we do with it? Let's make the best of it. You could just hearing those two pieces of your story, man. Like I've never heard you share it like that. It's obvious that she's, like you said, she's the rock, and like she's the person that like like your God ally, like through God, through her, is like helping you get into your highest power on this earth, and that's a pretty cool thing to witness.
Yeah, and it's been really awesome. And I know, and I shared with you in the battlefield group, right? I did, or we're in the midst of doing the 75 hard,
Yep.
right? And it's going great. Like, a lot of what I asked you for advice because you've done it a bunch of times, and your advice was spot on. So we're in a good routine. But what's even crazier is that when we do our outdoor walk, right, we do it together in 45-minute walk, and we don't have our phones, we don't have anything. We just have, I have my Apple just to keep the time, right? But that's even crazy. Like our relationship was strong back then, right, in that moment, but it's even stronger now, and I feel like that's really preparing for us for something big. And I'm really excited about that. But I did want to share, another kind of battle that I think is important to hear. And at first, I didn't share this story with a lot of people because it was definitely embarrassing. I definitely had a lot of anger in the situation. There was a lot of things that were going on in my life, and I feel like going through this, and I'll get to it here in a second, but I kind of want to lead up with this. Going through that, going through what I went through just in the getting fired and changing careers and stuff like that. I'm a firm believer that life prepares you for the next challenge, right? So yes, I got stronger in that sense, and I was going to need every ounce of strength in this next challenge. And so, obviously this happened about 3 years ago, right? Between 2 and 3 years ago, because there were these two events that are connected, happened a little bit time from each other. So, and I don't know if I've ever shared this story with you. It would be interesting if I haven't, but like I said, I haven't shared this person in public a whole lot. But the pandemic happened, right? And that was just a crazy time, right? Everybody was like, what the hell's going on in the world, right? And so, so we get into that and figure that out and figure what we're going to do there, and just, hey, how do we make the best of this, right? But in the midst of that, just in a crazy time. So it was right around Christmas, So it was right around Christmas. Sorry.
Man, good.
It was right around Christmas, and I remember. I don't remember the date or the day, but I just remember it was a couple of weeks before. It was about a week before Christmas or so, and I remember getting a call from my mom, right? And it was kind of weird. It was a weird day. I just remember something weird about that day, right? Mm-hmm. Just waking up, those feelings that you get. You're just like something's heavy, right? And there was a lot of stuff that led up to this event. But just to kind of start the story, right? The challenge, the battle that I went through. My mom called me, and I could just hear a different tone in her voice and stuff like that, and it just didn't sound like her. And I remember she was upset with me or something along those lines. I can't remember exactly why, but she was upset with something. And long story short, she was on the phone with me telling me that she was going to take her life.
Wow.
Right. And immediately I go into this space in my head where it's just like trauma centers. Like, okay, like what do I need to do to help? Like, it wasn't like an emotional state. It was more like just emergency mode.
Yeah.
Right. Like, what do I need to do? And I remember just talking to her, and obviously she was in the right frame of mind, and she was, saying a lot of stuff, a lot of hurtful stuff and stuff like that, and stuff that we've, she's alive, guys. But first of all,
good.
She's okay. But and we've gotten past that, and we've forgiven each other for a lot of different things. But in that moment, it was hectic, right? And so she lives in Delaware, and I live in Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. And so having to make that call to the police, right, in a different state, is never a call that I wish upon anybody. Right. To make that call to say, hey, I think this person's going to hurt themselves, is what they said, right? And I just remember just completely shutting down, emotionally, for a while, right? For a long time, after that. And again, I had to lean on a lot of the people that were around me, but there was also, I had to lean on a lot of the self-development that I did. Like, it's funny, like we do a lot of self-development, me and you, like you have a ton of books, I have a ton of books, we read stuff. Like I hardly watch the news anymore. Right. Like
Good
a lot
idea.
of, like a lot of my, like if you were to look at my social media, just like feed,
Yep.
if somebody says something negative, I usually give them a benefit of the doubt.
Yeah. Snooze them for 30 days.
Maybe they're just having a rough time, rough go of it,
Yeah.
right? I get it. But like, a lot of what I consume on a daily basis is positive thinking, positive thoughts, right? Affirmations, all that type of stuff. And I was like, oh, I'm a positive dude, right? Like, but when you have a moment like that where you're like, oh, I really need this stuff.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
Yep.
in this moment, like all that work I was doing, all that knowledge I was gaining, in moments of crisis, you're going to fall to your default mode, right? So if your default mode is like a shitty attitude and
Yep.
you're talking negative all the time, that's the default mode you're going to fall to. But if you have a positive, way of thinking and talking to yourself and strategies that you can use to help you get past those moments, that's what you're going to fall to. And I think that's the default mode I fell into in that moment. And it messed me up, man. Like for a good 6-7 months, like it was a battle every day. It was just like that part of my, like, I think a lot of people think like just because you do self-development, like all those negative thoughts go away. They don't. Like that voice is still in your head.
Yep.
It's just quiet, right?
Yep.
But in that moment, it gained a little strength, right?
Yeah.
And it was just as loud as the positive thoughts. And it was a lot of just every day back and forth, like between like, I'm up today, I'm down today, I'm up today, I'm down today.
I was just going to ask real quick. I was just going to ask that if there's 6 or 7 months, it was kind of like a low the whole time and you didn't even, like, you weren't even thinking or trying to pull yourself out of it because it was just like, this is the standard now, this is where I'm at? Or was it like, it's low today, but like I'm doing my best to pull myself out of it because I can see myself, then I'm low and like I need to get back into the positive state of mind? So you go up a little bit and then the next day, halfway through the day, you're down again. Like, was it up, down, or was it just a steady low?
No, it wasn't a steady low, because I knew the benchmark I was at.
Yeah.
And I was like, and I would always look up in my mind and be like, that's where I used to be. That's where I need to get back. I gotta get back.
Yeah.
Right. Like, how do I get back to that? Like, how do I get back to like equilibrium? Right. And just get back to like feeling good again.
Yeah.
And so some days I would make a lot of progress towards that. And then there would be some days I'd come back a little bit. Right. But then I'd shoot back up. And it was a battle, man. It wasn't fun. Again, Megan was there for all of it. And so that was really helped me get through that.
Yeah.
But that moment in time, like I said, it was really tough. And then, again, going back to life prepares you for the next moment. Like, I'm not even kidding you when I say this. Like, this is part of my story, and I hope like it helps people to get to really hone in on why it's important to work this muscle.
Yep.
Because if I hadn't, dude, like 100%, I'd probably be addicted to some type of drugs. 100%. Or be an alcoholic.
Yeah.
Right. Like, or something along those lines to numb the pain. Right.
Yep.
Like, but not even a year later, dude. My dad, super analytical dude, lawyer, like just very straightforward, like thinking, like logical, like no emotions either way. Like it's just like that. These are the facts. And business, pandemic ruined his business, right? He was sole proprietor. He was a bankruptcy lawyer. So obviously in COVID, there were no bankruptcies. And it just, it ruined him. Right. And I could just watch him deteriorate, right? And I would try to be there for him and talk to him and stuff like that. And it was about June or so. It was like right at the beginning of summer. a couple years ago, and luckily, he lived in the same house he lived in for the last like 25, 30 years. So all the next door neighbors were, I was
Yeah.
friends with their kids. Um, Mr. D, right? He's a great friend of mine. He's my dad's next door neighbor. Loves my dad. Like they've helped each other out in business and stuff like that. So, but he just calls me. He's like, Billy. He's like, you're like, I knocked on the door to go visit your dad. And he looked like crap.
Yeah.
Like, and he's like, I'm worried, dude. Like, I'm worried. And then with not even within like a short, I mean, probably a week after that, right? I get the call from my dad saying that he was ready to be done.
Yeah.
Like, so within a 2-year time span, like I've had both parents like just mentally destroyed, right?
Yeah.
And again, had to go through the same thing. I had to go through the exact same process I went through my mom, with my mom, and that was really tough. At the same time, but like I felt like in a weird way I was more equipped this time.
Yeah.
To handle that situation, but it was still tough. It was really tough, and after like getting my dad, into some facilities, and he's better now. He's, he's doing a lot better. He has a job again. He's kind of coming back to himself in the sense. But I just like, man, that's why I do what I do. Like that's why I fight so hard for everything, right? And I just like going back to like I don't complain, and I just try to find how I can get through something. Like there's always like for me, and I know just talking, but like for me, like I always tell Megan, like I don't freak out unless we have zero options.
Yeah.
Right. Like if there's a possibility that something could happen that could get us out of this situation,
you're
like
grabbing onto that possibility.
Yeah. Like for me, like hope is the thing that we need the most.
Yep.
Like a man without hope is lost.
Yeah.
And so I never want to lose hope. And so that's why I am always doing the things I need to do to just kind of harden my mind, I guess.
Yep.
And for those moments, because
they're constant.
They're constant. Like I know, like in my heart, like that's not the end of the tough moments in my life. Like, like they're gonna be tough moments throughout the rest of this journey, right? Like however long God lets me be on this earth, like
it'll come with battles.
That every day is going to be a battle. But man, like at the same time, I look back on all of it, and this just kind of hit me all of a sudden, and I'm just thankful for all of it. Like, and in the moment I wasn't.
Yeah, and rightfully so.
But man, I'm thankful for it because it's led me to here, like where I am at this exact moment. I am a type of person that lives heavily in the moment. You rarely see me take pictures when I'm like at events and stuff like that, because I'm like, I'll never be here again. Like this moment in my life, like somebody else will take a picture and I'll be like, oh yeah,
I remember that. Yeah.
Megan's good at taking pictures, she likes to take a lot of pictures. And so, but for me, like, I'm just like, man, I'm just not going to be here again in this.
Absorb as much as you can.
Yeah. Because I don't know when my moment's coming. Right. Yeah. And so, yeah, man. So it's been a hell of a journey so far.
Yeah, dude. The reason I asked if you had ups and downs, or if it was a steady like low for that time, and I had a feeling I knew what your answer was going to be, but I wanted to hear you say it, and then you said it plus some, which is what I appreciate. But that is testament to doing that work that you do on a daily basis, because you knew what the standard was, like minus that tragedy. Like you knew what your standard, like your normal standard was, which was upbeat, optimistic, positive, like happy-go-lucky. That's where you resonate the most. That's where you belong. But then you get hit, knocked down, so you go down a couple notches, and now you're down here. If you're not doing the work on a daily basis, weekly, monthly, yearly basis on yourself to have that be the standard up there, when you get knocked down, there's no looking back up to something else. It's just down is where I am now. And that could have, like you said it perfectly. Had you not done that work and known to be able to look up and be like, okay, that's where I got to get back to. Like, yeah, I'm down here right now, but I'm going to get back up there. Addicted to drugs, maybe like suicide, like most extreme case scenario, like all these other possibilities are real possibilities in someone's life if they're not doing that work to make sure that they're strong enough to get hit by life and pick themselves back up. Because it's so easy. I mean, that's why I do what I do. Like, you see my bookshelf back there, and like you said, my social media feed is a plethora of people succeeding and like doing good things in the world. And if I see negativity, I'm like, gone. Like, I do not have time, energy, or space in my life to be digesting that by choice. Like, does it come in like subconsciously from the media and stuff at times? Yeah, but like, that's, if I can block it, I can, and if when I can, I do. But more power to you, man, because I mean, that's it. In my opinion, that's it in life, is like, control what you can control and do as much positive as you can with yourself and for others, because you will get knocked down multiple times. And what are you going to do about it? Like, are you going to let it beat you, or are you going to just be stronger from it as you get through it? And that's, my dad, you might just like, he battled dementia for like 10 years, 12 years, 11, 12 years.
Yeah.
And first 8 years, it was like, like, he forgets stuff. No big deal. So my silver lining was like, yeah, he forgets stuff, but if you didn't know he had dementia, you probably never would have guessed it. And then there was like a year or two where you're starting to like not be able to do stuff like brush his teeth or like, and it was like, yeah, but he still knows who we are. Like, my silver lining, I found that silver lining. It could be worse. And then it got to the point where like we had to pick him up, put him in a wheelchair to get him from room to room. We had to feed him. We had to like give him baths. And like, my silver lining was like, my dad still smiles when he sees me. Like, okay, I'm good. Like, I still have a silver lining. There's still a best case scenario and all this. And then eventually he started mixing up our names and like call my mom random names. Like, so you could tell like he was starting to lose like recognition of family. And I was like, okay, that's gone. Like, and that was always my silver lining. But my dad's still alive on this bed for me to talk to, whether he knows who I am or what I'm saying. He's still physically here. It's like, it's constantly looking for that silver lining through the entire. That's my dad's situation. It's your parents going through what they went through. It's you going through what you've gone through. We are all facing those battles on a daily basis. And to me, it's just like, what are you doing with it? Like, I could have been, and still, woe was me. My dad died when he was 67. That's not fair. You didn't get to see my the twins being born. Woe was me. That's not fair. Like, those things make me super sad. And like, I cry at times because of it. So it's not like I'm like this shell of a human being that's like, oh, it doesn't affect me. Like, it certainly affects me. But amidst it all, I'm like, I had him for the first 37, 8 years of my life. Like, he made me the dad that I am for my kids, and I get to pass his legacy on through my children. Like,
That's awesome.
some people lose their dad, like, are born without a dad. Like, they've never know who their dad was. Or like my dad, his dad died when he was like 17. I'm like, my dad only got 17 years with his dad. So like, there's always worse things that could happen to you. And if you look at life through that prism, which is like, yeah, some shitty stuff is happening right now, or it has happened, but I'm still extremely blessed. And like you said at the very end there, like, I'm super thankful, like all of it, every bit of it, even losing my dad to dementia, like all the other stuff. I'm thankful for every piece of it, because it's who I am today. And I really, really love who I am today and the life that I'm living. So I can't wave a magic wand and like hand pick, like, I get to love who I am today and my life that I'm living, but I get to bring my dad back because that's what I really want. Like, that's not our choice. Like, our choice is, what do you do with those battles that you're thrown, like, that are going to be thrown in your face today, tomorrow, 5 years from now, when you're 75 or 80, like, what are you doing with those battles? So
Yeah.
I respect the shit out of you, man, because it's that, like, those 2 phone calls aren't easy, and like going through getting fired and all that stuff's not easy, but it's like, the you that I know is because you do all that work. And like, you're not somebody that brings other people down because you got knocked down. Like, you get knocked down, you're like, okay, how can I pick myself up as quickly as humanly possible, so then I can continue to pick everybody else up, because that's my mission on this earth. So
Yeah. Yeah. And just going back to that, you just made me think of something. Like, one of the thoughts that I had about like getting back up to there is, I remember, because one of my passions is helping other people, helping the community. Like, I might not change the world, but I can change the world around me.
yep.
Right. And make it a better place. And, I wanted to get back to that level, not yes, selfishly, I do want to
Yep.
get back to the level because I want to feel good. But also subconsciously, I was also saying to myself and thinking, like, somebody's going to need me.
Yep.
Like, and if I'm not the best version of me at that distinct moment, like, that might cause them to go do something that
Yep.
they wouldn't have done. And like, I just want to, obviously say this, like, if you're watching this and you're struggling and you're like at that point, like reach out to anybody, like
Yeah.
just reach out. And you reach out to me, reach out to Matt, like reach out to somebody, um, because you don't need to think that way,
Yeah.
right? There are options in this world. There's things that we can do. You can lean on us, right? And we can help you get to a place that you can at least get back to some kind of level of loving yourself, right?
Yep.
And so, like, if you're watching this today or sometime in the future, like, that doesn't have to be your story. You can get past that. Is it going to be easy? No, right? It's not. You're going to
Yeah.
have to do a lot of work, and it's going to suck, and it's not going to be fun
Yep.
at times. But I promise you, if you do the work, do the things you need to do, strengthen your mind, strengthen the people around you, right? Strengthen the relationships around you. I promise you can get in a better place.
Yep. Yeah. There's no stopping you when you get to that point.
Mm-hmm.
They're slowing you down occasionally, but there's no stopping you. That's what I always say to people. I'm like, yeah, I might get slowed down at times by life in general, but like I can promise you, I only stop like when I take that last breath on this earth and my spirit leaves my body and goes up hopefully to heaven. Like that's when I stop. Like until then, like I may slow down at times, but like you're not putting the brakes on me. So
Yep, 100%. I love it.
awesome, man. Where can people find you online if they want to just connect with you personally, or if they want to work with you, if they're looking for a financial advisor, what's the best way to connect with you?
Yeah, you can go to my Facebook page, Billy Zerillo. That's a good place to go. Also, you can find me on on my podcast, The Millennial with Billy and Mel. You can reach out to me that way. You can also email me at billy@terrawealth.com. And it doesn't always have to be about money. It does, for me, it's about how healthy you are financially, but also mentally, because those two things play a big role in your finances. So, like I said, our first conversation doesn't have to be anything about money. It could just be about you, right?
Yeah.
And how I can help you get to where you need to be, So, but yeah, that's how you can connect with me.
Awesome, man. I love everything you just said there about it doesn't have to be about money. Like, and that's like plant a seed. Like, hey, let's get to know each other. If I can help you with something in your personal life, like I'm happy to do that. Like, sincerely happy about doing that. And if it leads to business, cool. And if it doesn't, and you just help them in their personal life and they go out and make an impact in the community because of a conversation you had, like you said, your mission is to help the community and like change the world around you. Mission accomplished, man.
Yep. Yep.
Awesome,
Amen.
man. Well, thanks for being on the show. I appreciate you, man. I appreciate the friendship, appreciate what you're doing in the world, the positive energy you pour out into it, because I think more and more people need to do that and make the world a better place. It's what we should be all on this earth to do. If you're watching this show and you got some value out of it, which if you watch this whole episode, I'm sure you have, or if you know someone like Billy said here towards the end that's struggling with stuff like that, reach out to him, reach out to me, reach out to another friend, reach out to resources online. Just have that person that you can reach out to and talk to and process things with, because none of us are alone. We all need to lean on each other to help get through these battles. So thanks, brother, man. I appreciate you being here.
Yeah, man. Appreciate it.
All right, I'll see you on the battlefield.